She stood outside the hospital at 2 in the morning, barefoot in the snow, clutching her newborn son against her chest. Her hospital gown was soaked with melted ice.
Thank God.
Her body was still
Are you both
bleeding
all right?
from giving birth
Elias.
just hours earlier.
How did you know we were here?
And her phone showed
It's
a
over
text
before it
message
even
from the
began.
man who had promised to
Absolutely.
love her forever. 7 words that destroyed everything she thought she knew. This is not my problem anymore. He had abandoned her, canceled her insurance, drained her bank accounts, left her with $47,000 in medical debt, and nowhere to go. She had nothing. No money, no home, no family, no hope.
I am so overwhelmed.
And then, through
Thank
the
you.
swirling snow, a limousine pulled up. The window rolled down, a face she recognized. A billionaire she had saved a year ago without even knowing his name. But here's where this story takes a turn you will not expect. She did not get in. She refused his help. She refused his money. She refused to be rescued. Because Malene Rhodes had learned something that would change her life forever. The most powerful thing a woman can do is save herself. What happened next will shock you. It will break your heart. And by the end, it will make you believe in the strength you did not know you had. This is a story about betrayal, survival, and the sisterhood that rises when one woman refuses to stay silent. Stay with me until the end. Before we begin, know this. This story will teach you how to recognize financial abuse before it destroys you, how to document everything when no one believes you, and how to find strength when the whole world tells you to give up. The meaning is simple. Kindness is not weakness. Asking for help is not failure. And no matter how dark your night becomes, you are never truly alone. If even one person watches this and finds the courage to leave, to fight back, to rise again, then every word was worth it. Because the way this story ends is something you will never forget. Value statement. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This is not just entertainment. This story contains real lessons about recognizing financial abuse, protecting yourself legally, and finding strength when everything falls apart. By the end, you will walk away with knowledge that could save your life or the life of someone you love. The meaning of this story is simple, but powerful. Kindness is not weakness. Asking for help is not failure. And no matter how dark your situation becomes, you are never truly alone. If even one person watches this and finds the courage to leave a bad situation, to document abuse, to reach out for help, then every word was worth it. She did not expect the cold to hurt this much. Malene Rhodes stood just outside the sliding doors of New York Presbyterian Hospital, her newborn wrapped in the thin cotton blanket they had handed her only minutes earlier. Snow drifted under the street lamp, settling on her hair, melting against her exhausted skin. The wind cut through her hospital gown like a blade, finding every gap, every weakness, every place where her body was still raw from giving birth. She had barely taken her first step out when the doors hissed shut behind her, locking her out as if she were a stranger. The automatic mechanism clicked with a finality that made her stomach drop. She was not supposed to be alone. She was not supposed to be standing in freezing air with her body still trembling from 14 hours of labor. Derek had promised he would be there. He had sworn on everything sacred that he would take her home, hold their baby, fix everything that had gone wrong between them. But his last text, sent while she was pushing through contractions that felt like they might split her in half, was still glowing on her cracked phone screen. This is not my problem anymore. Handle your own mess. The words burned hotter than the icy wind slicing across her cheeks. Malene clutched the baby closer, her arms weak, her stitches throbbing with every movement. Every breath felt like glass inside her chest. The kind of pain that was not just physical, but something deeper. Something that reached into the core of who she thought she was and twisted. She tried to steady herself against the metal railing, but her knees buckled with exhaustion. For a moment, she thought she might collapse right there on the hospital curb. Its concrete was slick with ice. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that stuck to her eyelashes and made it hard to see. Cars zoomed past on the street, their headlights flashing across her frightened eyes. Not a single one slowed down. Not a single driver glanced her way. To everyone else, she was invisible. Just another woman life had chewed up and spit out onto a sidewalk in Manhattan. The city did not care about her broken heart. The city did not care that she had nowhere to go. The city just kept moving, cold and indifferent, while she stood there with her whole world crumbling around her. "Please," she whispered into the night, not sure who she was begging. God, fate, the universe, anyone who might be listening. Her vision blurred with tears and exhaustion. The world tilted dangerously. She could feel her consciousness starting to slip, the edges of everything going gray and soft. Then, through the swirl of snow, headlights appeared, different from the others. These lights slowed down. These lights stopped. A long black limousine rolled to a stop in front of her, the kind of car she had only ever seen on Fifth Avenue or in movies about people whose lives were nothing like hers. The chrome trim gleamed under the street lamp. The windows were tinted so dark she could not see inside. For a moment, she felt afraid. What kind of person stopped for a stranger at 2 in the morning? What kind of person drove a car like that? Then the window glided down, revealing a man whose face she knew but never expected to see again. "Malene," his deep voice cut through the storm. "What happened to you?" Her breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice. She knew those eyes, dark and steady, and filled with a concern that seemed completely out of place in this moment. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Just a small, broken sound that might have been a sob, or might have been relief, or might have been both. The man stepped out of the limousine without hesitation. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long black coat that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. He moved toward her with purpose, his expensive shoes crunching through the snow like it was nothing. "Malene," he said again, and this time his voice was softer, gentler. "What are you doing out here? Where's the father?" She could not answer. The word father felt like poison on her tongue. The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the baby in her arms. Then he looked at the thin hospital gown, the bare legs, the complete absence of anything that might protect her from the freezing night. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked like anger, though not at her. "Come with me," he said. "You need to get warm." And that was the moment her entire fate shifted, though she had no idea what waited next. But to understand how Malene Rhodes ended up standing in the snow with nothing but a newborn and a broken heart, we need to go back. Back to when she still believed in the goodness of others. Back to when she thought love could fix anything. Back to the beginning of the end. 6 months earlier, Malene had been a woman who believed in doing the right thing. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Rochester, New York. A small rented house with creaky floors and drafty windows. A mother who worked double shifts at the hospital and still somehow found time to braid Malene's hair every Sunday morning. A father who fixed cars in the garage and taught her that hard work was the answer to almost everything. Her childhood was built on simple rules. Be kind to everyone, even when they are not kind to you. Work hard, even when no one is watching. Do not expect much from the world, and you will never be disappointed. Those rules served her well for a long time. When her mother got sick, Malene dropped out of college to help with the bills. When her mother passed, Malene held her father's hand and promised they would get through it together. When her father followed 2 years later, his heart broken beyond repair, Malene buried him next to her mother and learned the harshest rule of all. Sometimes, life takes without asking. Sometimes, love is not enough to keep people alive. Sometimes you end up alone no matter how hard you try to hold on. She moved to Manhattan for a fresh start, scraping together enough money from her parents' life insurance to enroll in a radiology tech program at a community college. The city was overwhelming at first. Too loud, too fast, too expensive. She lived in a studio apartment the size of a closet and ate ramen noodles for dinner 3 nights a week. But she loved the work, the rhythm of the machines, the calmness of helping frightened patients through their scans, the soft hum of the hospital corridors at night when everything felt quiet and purposeful. People trusted her with their fears, with their bodies, with the most vulnerable moments of their lives. For the first time since losing her parents, she felt like she mattered. Then came Derek Langford. He walked into her life on a random Tuesday afternoon, wearing expensive cologne that lingered in the air long after he passed. His smile was too polished, too practiced, the kind of smile that should have been a warning sign. His clothes looked like they were ripped straight from a designer window on Fifth Avenue. He was visiting a friend in the hospital, he said. Got lost looking for the cafeteria, he said. Thought she looked like someone who might know where to find decent coffee in this maze of hallways. She laughed and pointed him in the right direction. He came back the next day with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that made her forget all her mother's warnings about men who were too charming. He called her Maddie, like he owned the nickname, like they had known each other for years instead of hours. He took her to rooftop bars she could not afford, ordered bottles of wine she could not pronounce, told her stories about his life that made her own seem small and gray by comparison. He told her she deserved more than her quiet little world. He told her she was beautiful. He told her she was special. He told her he had never met anyone like her. And God help her, she believed him. He told her he loved her before she was ready to hear it. He moved into her tiny apartment without asking, just showed up one night with a suitcase and a smile and said he could not stand being away from her anymore. He started borrowing money, just until the next paycheck, just a small loan between people who loved each other. Then the borrowing became taking. Then the taking became stealing. Then her credit card started showing charges she never made at stores she had never visited for things she never wanted. Every time she tried to confront him, he knew exactly what to say. You worry too much, babe. I have got us. Do not you trust me after everything I have done for you? And she would feel guilty. She would apologize. She would push down the voice in her head that sounded like her mother saying, Girl, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Her co-worker, Janet Miller, tried to warn her once. They were sitting in the hospital cafeteria during a lunch break, and Janet leaned across the table with knowing eyes. Janet was 53 years old, twice divorced, and had a way of seeing through nonsense that Malene both admired and feared. Girl, Janet said, stirring her coffee with the resigned wisdom of a woman who had learned every lesson the hard way. That man of yours has more red flags than a 4th of July parade. And I should know. I married 3 of them. Malene laughed it off. Derek was different. Derek loved her. Derek would change once he got his life together. He just needed time. He just needed support. He just needed her to believe in him a little longer. When Malene found out she was pregnant, she sat on the bathroom floor for an hour, staring at the positive test, crying from fear and hope in equal measure. Maybe this would finally make Derek grow into the man she kept imagining he could be. Maybe a baby would give him purpose. Maybe fatherhood would unlock something good in him that she had always believed was hiding underneath the charm and the excuses. She was wrong. Derek panicked, His carefully maintained facade cracked like cheap paint. He started staying out late, sometimes not coming home at all. He came back smelling like perfume that was not hers, with lipstick stains on his collar that he did not even bother to hide. He blamed her for his stress. He blamed her for the pregnancy, as if she had done it alone. He blamed her for ruining his life, his plans, his freedom. Yet Malene held on. She told herself things would get better after the birth. She told herself he was just scared. She told herself the Derek she had fallen in love with was still in there somewhere, just waiting to emerge. She was still telling herself that when her landlord gave notice the week before her due date. Derek had gambled away the rent money. Again. The eviction papers were already filed. She had 30 days to leave the only home she had known in Manhattan. She tried calling Derek when her contractions started. 47 times she called him. 47 times. His phone rang and went to voicemail. And when he finally responded, it was not with comfort or apology or love. It was with 7 words that shattered what was left of her heart. This is not my problem anymore. But even in her darkest moment, standing in the snow with her newborn son and nowhere to go, Malene had one memory that burned like a small, stubborn flame. A late-night emergency about a year ago. A man brought into the ER after a minor car accident. He was disoriented, pale, breathing in short gasps that had nothing to do with his physical injuries. The doctors cleared him quickly, but he could not stop shaking. Could not stop the tears from streaming down his face. Everyone else was busy with a major trauma case. Multiple victims from a highway pileup. The ER was chaos, and this man with his minor injuries and his broken heart was the lowest priority. So Malene sat with him. She held his hand. She talked him through the panic attack that was gripping his chest like a vice. She did not know who he was. She did not ask. She just stayed with him until his breathing slowed and the color returned to his face. "It is the anniversary of my wife's death," he finally said, his voice cracking. 3 years today. I thought I was fine. I thought I had moved on. And then I could not breathe. Malene squeezed his hand. Grief does not follow a timeline. It shows up when it wants to, and all you can do is ride it out. He looked at her with quiet gratitude, as if she had given him something far more precious than medical help, as if she had given him permission to fall apart. She never learned his name. She never expected to see him again, until the limousine window rolled down, until those same dark, steady eyes found hers in the snow, until Elias Whitmore, one of the most powerful billionaires in Manhattan, stepped out of his car and into her broken life. "Malene," he said again, his voice cutting through the storm, "let me help you." She looked at him, this stranger who was not quite a stranger, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope exactly. She was too exhausted for hope, but something close, something that felt like maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she thought. The heat inside the limousine hit Malene like a wave. After the brutal cold of the hospital entrance, the warmth felt almost painful. Her skin prickled. Her fingers throbbed as circulation returned. She sank into the leather seat. Lucas cradled against her chest and fought the urge to simply close her eyes and disappear into unconsciousness. But she could not sleep. Not yet. Not until she understood what was happening. Elias Whitmore sat across from her, his long coat still dusted with snowflakes, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. The limousine's interior was all soft leather and ambient lighting, the kind of luxury she had only ever seen in magazines. Through the tinted windows, Manhattan streaked past like a river of light. Yellow cabs, glowing storefronts, people hurrying through the snow with their collars turned up against the cold, a whole world of warmth and safety that had somehow locked her out. "Where do you want me to take you?" Elias asked quietly. It was such a simple question, such an impossible question. Malene thought about her apartment, but she had been evicted. She thought about Derek, but he had made his position clear. She thought about calling her late mother's friend, Barbara, in Florida, but it was 2 in the morning, and Barbara was 83 years old. And what could she possibly do from 1,000 miles away? "I do not know," Malene heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I do not have anywhere to go." The words hung in the air between them. Elias was quiet for a long moment. She could see him processing, calculating, deciding something. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. "I have a penthouse on Park Avenue, multiple guest rooms, a full staff. You could stay there until you figure out your next step." Malene stiffened. Every alarm bell in her head started ringing at once. She had just escaped one man who promised her the world and delivered nothing but destruction. She was not about to walk into another trap, no matter how beautiful the prison might be. "No," she said firmly. "I appreciate the offer, but no." Elias blinked. He seemed genuinely surprised by her refusal. She wondered how many women had ever said no to him about anything. "Malene," he said slowly, "you are sitting in a hospital gown in the middle of a snowstorm with a newborn baby. You just told me you have nowhere to go. I am trying to help." "I know," she said, "and I appreciate it, but I do not need charity. I do not need a man to rescue me." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she meant every one of them. She had spent the last 2 years letting Derek convince her that she needed him, that she could not survive without him, that she was helpless and lost and lucky to have someone willing to put up with her. She was done being helpless, even if being strong meant sitting in a limousine with nowhere to go and no idea what came next. Elias studied her for a long moment. She expected him to argue, to push, to use his money and his power to override her objections the way men like him always did. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "Then tell me what you do need." Malene thought about it, really thought about it. "Is there a women's shelter nearby?" she asked. "Somewhere safe I could go tonight?" Elias's expression flickered. Something that might have been admiration crossed his features before disappearing behind his carefully controlled mask. "There is one in Brooklyn," he said. "Safe Haven. I have donated to them before. They take in women in emergency situations. Can you take me there?" He hesitated, just for a second. Then he leaned forward and pressed the intercom button. "Thomas, change of plans. Safe Haven Women's Shelter in Brooklyn." The driver's voice came back immediately. "Yes, sir." The limousine changed direction, gliding through the snowy streets toward a future Malene could not yet imagine. As they drove, Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple white business card. Heavy cardstock, elegant font, nothing ostentatious, just his name and a phone number. "If you need anything," he said, handing it to her, "anything at all, day or night, this is my direct line." Malene took the card, studying it for a moment. The paper felt expensive between her fingers. She thought about throwing it away. She thought about handing it back. She thought about all the ways this small rectangle of cardstock could be a trap. Instead, she tucked it into the pocket of her hospital gown. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You do not know me." "Not really." Elias leaned back in his seat, his gaze drifting toward the snow-streaked window. "A year ago," he said quietly, "I was at my lowest point, the anniversary of my wife's death. I had a minor car accident, barely a fender bender, but something about it broke something inside me. I ended up in an emergency room, surrounded by people rushing past me, and I could not breathe. I could not think. I felt like I was dying, even though nothing was physically wrong," Malene remembered. She remembered his hand gripping hers like a lifeline. She remembered the tears streaming down his face. She remembered thinking that grief did not care how rich or powerful you were. It came for everyone equally. You stayed with me, Elias continued. You held my hand. You talked me through it. You did not know who I was. You did not want anything from me. You just helped. He turned to look at her, his dark eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. My wife Caroline was like that. She helped people without expecting anything in return. When I lost her, I thought that kind of goodness had disappeared from the world. That night in the hospital, you reminded me it had not. Malene did not know what to say. She had not thought about that night in months. It had been just another shift, just another patient, just another small act of kindness in a job full of them. To her, it had been nothing special. To him, apparently, it had meant everything. I am not trying to rescue you, Elias said. I can see that you do not want that, but I owe you a debt. Let me repay it by making sure you and your son are safe tonight. Malene looked down at Lucas, sleeping peacefully against her chest. His tiny face was relaxed, his breathing steady. He had no idea that his mother was lost and scared and clinging to the ragged edge of hope. She would do anything to protect him. Anything. Okay, she said finally. Take me to the shelter. But that is all. I will figure out the rest on my own. Elias nodded once. Fair enough. The limousine pulled up to Safe Haven Women's Shelter just as the first light of dawn began to streak across the sky. The building was unremarkable from the outside. A converted brownstone with a discreet sign and security cameras mounted above the entrance. But there was something about it that felt safe, something about the warm light glowing in the windows, something about the way the snow had been carefully shoveled from the front steps. A woman appeared at the entrance as Malene stepped out of the limousine, 40-something, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. You must be Malene, the woman said. Rosa called ahead. I am Patricia, the intake coordinator. Come inside before you freeze. Malene turned back to the limousine one last time. Elias watched her through the open door, his expression unreadable. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded once. Take care of yourself, Malene Rhodes. Then the door closed, and the limousine pulled away into the early morning light. Malene watched it go, something complicated stirring in her chest. Then she turned and walked through the doors of Safe Haven, her son in her arms and her head held high. She was not accepting rescue. She was accepting help. And that difference, small as it seemed, would change everything. Inside the shelter, Malene found a world she had never known existed. The common area was warm and clean, filled with mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh coffee. Women of all ages moved through the space, some carrying children, some carrying laundry, some just carrying the weight of their own stories. Patricia led her through the intake process with quiet efficiency. Name, date of birth, emergency contacts, if any, medical conditions, reasons for seeking shelter. Malene answered each question honestly, watching Patricia's expression for signs of judgment. There were none. We are not here to judge you, Patricia said, as if reading her mind. We are here to help you get back on your feet. That is all. She explained the rules: temporary housing for up to 90 days, access to legal aid, job placement services, childcare during interviews and appointments, support groups for women dealing with domestic abuse, financial abuse, and trauma. We are not just a shelter, Patricia said. We are a launching pad. Our goal is to get you back into the world, stronger than before, not to keep you dependent on us forever. Malene nodded, overwhelmed by resources she had never known existed. All this time she had felt so alone, so lost, so convinced that there was no help for women like her. She had been wrong. Patricia showed her to a small room on the second floor, a single bed, freshly made, a crib for Lucas, already assembled, a window overlooking a small courtyard where someone had planted winter flowers that somehow survived the cold. It was not much, but it was safe. And for the first time in months, Malene Rhodes allowed herself to cry, not from sadness or fear or exhaustion, though she felt all of those things. She cried from relief, because she had made it through the night, and tomorrow she would start fighting back. Malene met Denise Washington on her third day at the shelter. She was sitting in the common room, trying to figure out how to fill out a government assistance form with one hand while holding Lucas with the other, when a voice cut through her concentration. "Girl, you are doing that all wrong." Malene looked up to find a woman standing over her, 40-something, with rich brown skin, sharp eyes that seemed to see everything, and a smile that could cut through darkness like a knife. Denise Washington dropped into the chair across from her without waiting for an invitation. "First of all," she said, reaching for the form, "you have to lie on question 12. Everyone lies on question 12. They ask about your monthly expenses, but they do not actually want the truth. They want a number that makes their paperwork look good." Malene blinked. "I do not understand." Denise laughed, a warm sound that filled the room. "Honey, nobody understands. That is the point. The system is designed to confuse you, so you give up and go away. But I have been filling out these forms for 3 months, and I have learned every trick in the book." She took the pen from Malene's hand and started making corrections. Denise had been at Safe Haven for 3 months, rebuilding her life after her husband of 15 years had drained their savings and disappeared with his secretary. She had lost her house, her car, and most of her dignity before finding her way to the shelter. But she had not lost her spirit. "Let me see his picture," Denise said after the paperwork was finished. "Your man, the one who put you here." Malene hesitated. Then she pulled up a photo of Derek on her cracked phone screen. Denise studied it for exactly 3 seconds. "Mm-hmm," she said, shaking her head slowly. "I can smell the audacity through the screen. Look at those teeth. Too white, too perfect. Never trust a man with veneers and no savings. That is a man who spends more on his appearance than his responsibilities." Malene let out a surprised laugh. The first real laugh she had managed in weeks. Denise grinned. "There it is. You still know how to smile. That is step 1, honey. As long as you can still smile, they have not beaten you." Over the next few days, Denise became Malene's unofficial guide to survival. She taught her how to navigate the bureaucracy, which caseworkers actually wanted to help, and which ones just wanted to clear their desks, how to apply for emergency food assistance, emergency medical coverage, emergency child care. Everything was an emergency when your whole life had collapsed overnight. She taught her how to document Derek's abuse. "You have got to protect yourself legally," Denise said one evening, sitting on Malene's bed while Lucas slept in his crib. "Men like Derek, they know how to work the system. They know how to make you look crazy while they walk away clean. You need evidence. You need witnesses. You need a paper trail so long they could wallpaper a mansion with it." Malene took notes on a borrowed pad of paper, screenshots of every cruel text Derek had sent, records of every financial transaction he had made in her name, statements from coworkers who had witnessed his behavior, dates and times and details that might seem insignificant but could prove essential in court. "Most importantly," Denise said, leaning closer, "you need your tribe, women who have been through it, women who will believe you when nobody else does, women who will stand beside you when the whole world is telling you to sit down and shut up." That night, Malene opened her phone and searched for the name on the card Rosa Delgado had given her. Phoenix Moms. The website was simple but powerful. An online community of mothers who had been abandoned, abused, or betrayed. Thousands of women sharing resources, legal advice, and emotional support. Malene created an account with trembling fingers. Then she wrote her story for the first time. My name is Malene. I am 32 years old. 3 days ago, I gave birth alone in a hospital because my boyfriend abandoned me. He took my money, destroyed my credit, and told me I was not his problem anymore. I have nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I do not know what to do next. She stared at the words for a long moment. Then she pressed send. Within an hour, the responses started flooding in. You are not alone. We believe you. This is not your fault. Here is what you need to do next. Story after story from women who had survived the same nightmare. Women who had rebuilt their lives from nothing. Women who had found strength they did not know they possessed. One response stood out from the rest. A woman named Linda Harrison, a family law attorney who offered pro bono consultations for Phoenix Moms members. Your story breaks my heart, Linda wrote. But it also gives me hope, because you are already fighting. I would be honored to help you fight harder. Please reach out if you need legal assistance. Malene messaged her immediately. 2 days later, she sat across from Linda Harrison in a cramped conference room at a legal aid office in Lower Manhattan. Linda was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that had seen too much injustice to be shocked by anything anymore. She wore a simple gray blazer and no jewelry except a thin, gold wedding band. She studied the documents Malene had gathered with quiet intensity. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. Credit card records showing accounts opened in Malene's name without her consent. Screenshots of Derek's texts, each one more cruel than the last. This is textbook financial abuse, Linda said finally, setting down the last document. Clear as day. He systematically isolated you, drained your resources, and made you dependent on him. Then he abandoned you when you needed him most. Malene felt her chest tighten. Hearing it spelled out so clinically made it somehow more real, more terrible. Can I press charges? She asked. You can do more than that, Linda replied. You can sue for damages. You can file for full custody with zero visitation. You can potentially pursue criminal charges, depending on what else we find. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Here is what you need to understand, Malene. The system is not always fair. It is often designed to protect men like Derek and punish women like you. But when you have evidence and witnesses, you have power. The question is whether you are ready to use it. Malene thought about Lucas, about the promise she had made to him in that hospital room, about the mother she wanted to be and the life she wanted to build. I am ready, she said. Good, Linda said, a hint of a smile crossing her features. Then let us get to work. Over the next 3 weeks, Malene threw herself into building her case with a determination she had not known she possessed. Every morning, she woke before dawn to feed Lucas and review documents. Every afternoon, she met with Linda to prepare legal filings. Every evening, she connected with the Phoenix Moms community, drawing strength from women who had walked this path before her. Rosa Delgado, the nurse who had helped her at the hospital, became an unexpected ally. She provided copies of Malene's medical records, such as documenting the insurance cancellation, the forced early discharge, of the cruel circumstances of her son's birth. I knew something was wrong that night, Rosa said when they had met for coffee. I kept duplicates of everything, just in case. Slowly, Malene's life began to stabilize. A small apartment became available through a church assistance program. 2 rooms, clean and quiet, in a safe neighborhood in Queens. The rent was subsidized, the neighbors were kind, and there was a playground just 2 blocks away. A job interview materialized at a medical imaging clinic. The hiring manager, a woman named Claire, had read Maline's story in the Phoenix Moms Forum. "We need good people," Claire said during the interview. "And honestly, anyone who can survive what you have been through has exactly the kind of strength this job requires." Even Elias Whitmore checked in, texting occasionally to see how she was doing. "I hope you are finding your footing," he wrote one evening. "Please do not hesitate to reach out if you need anything." Maline appreciated his concern, but she was careful to keep her distance, politely declining his offers of help. "I need to do this myself," she texted back, "but thank you for caring." His response came quickly. "I understand completely. Just know I am here if you ever need a friend." By the end of the 3rd week, Maline felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Hope. Real, genuine hope. She had a lawyer fighting for her, a community supporting her, a job prospect on the horizon, a safe place to live, a son who was healthy and growing stronger every day. Maybe, she allowed herself to think, the worst is finally behind me. She was wrong. The letter from Derek's lawyer arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, thick and official and terrifying. Maline tore it open with trembling fingers. The first line made her blood run cold. "You are hereby notified that Derek Allen Langford has filed civil suit against you for defamation, alienation of affection, and is seeking full custody of the minor child Lucas." Her legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall of her apartment building, the letter crumpling in her hands, her vision blurring with tears. Derek was suing her. He was trying to take her son. And just like that, the hope she had carefully built came crashing down around her. The family courthouse in Manhattan smelled like old paper, stale coffee, and broken dreams. Maline sat at a worn wooden table, Lucas sleeping in a carrier beside her, facing a judge she had never met. Judge Harold Patterson was in his 60s, with silver hair combed severely back, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a prominent nose, and the tired eyes of a man who had seen too many families tear themselves apart in this very room. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Wood-paneled walls, harsh fluorescent lights, an American flag drooping in the corner, everything felt worn and institutional, designed to process human tragedy as efficiently as possible. Derek sat at the opposite table, flanked by his lawyer, Richard Blake, and 2 paralegals who shuffled papers importantly. He wore a tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and an expression of wounded sincerity that made Maline's stomach turn. This was not the Derek who had left her in the snow. This was not the Derek who had called their baby a mistake. This was the other Derek, the charming one, the convincing one, the one who made people believe his lies. Sitting in the gallery behind Derek was Victoria Chase, blonde, polished, Instagram perfect. She wore a cream-colored dress and a sympathetic expression, like she was watching a sad movie rather than a custody hearing that would determine the fate of a child. "Your Honor," Richard Blake began, rising from his seat with practiced confidence. His voice was smooth, polished, the kind of voice that made lies sound reasonable. "My client is a devoted father who has been systematically alienated from his child by a woman consumed by jealousy and spite." Maline gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. Every word was a knife. "Mr. Langford attempted to maintain contact throughout the pregnancy," Blake continued, pacing slowly for effect. "He was met with hostility, manipulation, and emotional instability. When he tried to establish a relationship with his son, Miss Rhodes responded with a campaign of public defamation, posting false accusations on internet forums designed to destroy his reputation." Blake paused, letting his words sink in. "My client is not perfect," he admitted, a calculated show of reasonableness. "He has made mistakes, but his only goal today is to protect his child from an unstable environment and establish the father-son relationship that Miss Rhodes has cruelly denied him. Judge Patterson made a note, his expression unreadable. Then he turned toward Malene. Miss Rhodes, you are representing yourself today? Yes, Your Honor, Malene said, hating how small her voice sounded in the large room. My attorney is working on securing additional funding for extended representation. Linda Harrison had warned her this might happen. The Phoenix Moms Legal Fund was stretched thin, and custody battles could drag on for months. But Malene had been so confident in her evidence, so certain that the truth would speak for itself. The judge nodded slowly, a hint of sympathy crossing his features. Very well. You may proceed with your response. Malene stood on shaking legs. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her head. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. But standing here, facing Derek's smug expression and the weight of the courtroom's formal authority, the words felt inadequate. Your Honor, she began, her voice steadier than she felt, everything Mr. Blake just said is a lie. She paused, gathering her courage. Derek Langford did not try to maintain contact during my pregnancy. He abandoned me. He canceled my health insurance 3 days before I gave birth, leaving me with $47,000 in medical bills. He ignored 47 phone calls while I was in labor. He has never held his son, never changed a diaper, never spent a single night caring for Lucas. She gestured to the stack of documents on her table. I have evidence. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts. Credit cards opened in my name without my consent. Text messages where Derek told me, and I quote, "This is not my problem anymore. Handle your own mess." She held up her phone, the screenshot visible on the screen. This was sent while I was pushing through contractions, while I was bringing our son into the world. He did not even have the decency to wait until the baby was born before abandoning us. Derek's expression flickered, just for a moment, a crack in his careful facade. But then Richard Blake was on his feet. Your Honor, these alleged documents have not been properly authenticated. Miss Rhodes could have fabricated any of this material. Additionally, her emotional state clearly demonstrates the instability my client has been concerned about. Judge Patterson raised a hand. I will determine what is admitted, Counselor. Miss Rhodes, continue. Malene took a breath. She had prepared for this. She had practiced for this. I also have statements from other women Derek has done this to before, she said. This is a pattern of behavior that spans years. He targets vulnerable women, drains their finances, impregnates them, and abandons them when they are no longer useful to him. Blake laughed dismissively. Your Honor, this is hearsay, unsubstantiated accusations from anonymous internet strangers. These claims have no place in a custody hearing. Judge Patterson frowned. Miss Rhodes, unless these witnesses can testify in person with authenticated evidence, I cannot consider their statements as fact. Malene felt her heart sink. She had the truth, but the truth was not enough. Not here, not today. Not against a lawyer who charged $500 an hour and a system designed to protect men like Derek. The hearing continued for another 90 minutes. Derek took the stand and performed brilliantly. He spoke of his deep desire to be a father, his heartbreak at being denied access to his son, his willingness to co-parent peacefully if only Malene would stop her campaign of harassment. He even managed to produce tears at one point, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief while describing how much he missed his baby boy. Victoria Chase testified with rehearsed precision, describing Malene as jealous, irrational, and possibly dangerous. I have witnessed Derek's devotion firsthand, Victoria said sweetly. He talks about Lucas constantly. He just wants to be a good father. But Malene, she paused for effect, Malene seems determined to keep them apart out of spite. By the time Judge Patterson called for a recess to deliberate, Malene knew what was coming. She could see it in the judge's eyes. He believed Derek. He believed the polished lawyer, and the expensive suit, and the pretty girlfriend with her sympathetic testimony. He did not believe the exhausted single mother in her second-hand clothes, clutching documents that nobody wanted to examine. When Judge Patterson returned, his expression confirmed her fears. Based on the evidence presented today, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, I am ordering temporary shared custody pending a full investigation by Child Protective Services. Mr. Langford will have supervised visitation every other weekend until further review. The words hit Malene like a physical blow. No, she said, her voice cracking. Your Honor, he abandoned us. He left us outside a hospital in the snow. Miss Rhodes, Judge Patterson said sharply, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt. This is a temporary arrangement. You will have the opportunity to present additional evidence at the next hearing in 6 weeks. But he is not safe, Malene protested, her voice rising despite herself. He does not care about Lucas. He only cares about hurting me. That is enough, the judge snapped. One more outburst, and I will have you removed from this courtroom. My decision stands. Court is adjourned. He banged his gavel, and the sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Derek caught Malene's eye across the courtroom. And for one terrible second, he smiled. Not a warm smile, not a kind smile, a triumphant smile. The smile of a predator who had just cornered his prey. Outside the courthouse, Malene sat on a cold stone bench and let the tears fall. She had lost control. She had raised her voice. She had looked exactly like what they wanted her to look like. Crazy, unstable, unfit. Everything she had built over the past 3 weeks. The evidence, the witnesses, the careful documentation had crumbled to nothing in the face of Derek's polished lies. Denise found her there 20 minutes later, shivering in the late autumn cold. Girl? Denise said, softly, settling onto the bench beside her. I was in the gallery. I saw the whole thing. I made it worse, Malene whispered. I yelled at the judge. I looked crazy, just like they wanted. You looked like a mother fighting for her child, Denise said firmly. That is not crazy. That is human. But the judge? Malene started. The judge saw what Derek wanted him to see. Denise interrupted. A polished man in an expensive suit with a pretty girlfriend and a fancy lawyer. That is what judges are trained to see. They are not trained to see the monster underneath. She took Malene's hand, her grip warm and steady. But this is not over, she said. You have evidence that judge did not examine. You have witnesses he did not hear. And most importantly, you have us. The Phoenix moms do not lose, honey. Not when we fight together. Malene wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How do we fight this? Denise's expression hardened with determination. We find every woman Derek Langford has ever hurt. And we make sure the whole world knows exactly who he really is. The phone call that changed everything came 3 days after the custody hearing. Malene was sitting in her small apartment, Lucas asleep in his crib, trying to force herself to eat a sandwich she did not want. The defeat in the courtroom had left her hollowed out, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical fatigue. Her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost did not answer. Is this Malene Rhodes? A woman's voice asked. The voice was steady, but layered with something heavy. Old pain, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. Yes, Malene said cautiously. Who is this? My name is Sarah Mitchell. You do not know me, but I know Derek Langford, and I have been waiting years for someone to believe me. Malene sat up straight, her heart suddenly pounding. Tell me everything, she said. Sarah Mitchell's story began in 2018. I met him at a coffee shop in Columbus, Sarah said. Classic meet cute. He bumped into me, spilled my latte, bought me a new one, asked for my number. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. Malene closed her eyes. She could picture it perfectly. The smile, the compliments, the way he made you feel like the only woman in the world. He moved fast, Sarah continued. 3 months in, he was living with me. 6 months in, he was borrowing money. By the time I realized I was pregnant, he had opened 2 credit cards in my name and maxed them both out. How much did he take from you? Malene asked quietly. $47,000, Sarah said. Same as you, probably. He has a number he likes to hit, enough to destroy your credit, but not quite enough to trigger serious fraud investigations. Malene's blood ran cold. That was exactly how much Derek had stolen from her. He left when Emma was 6 weeks old, Sarah said, her voice cracking slightly. Just disappeared one night, took my car, took my savings, left a note saying he needed to find himself. I tried to track him down, but he had already moved on, to someone else, to another victim. She is 6 now, Sarah said. Emma. Derek has never met her, never paid child support, never acknowledged she exists. For all she knows, she does not have a father. Malene wiped tears from her eyes. How did you find me? The Phoenix Moms Forum, Sarah said. I have been watching for years, waiting for another woman to come forward. When I saw your post, I knew the details were too similar to be coincidence. Are there others? Sarah was quiet for a moment. That I know of? At least 2 more. Karen Brooks in Chicago, Amanda Foster in Philadelphia. Same pattern, same timeline, same destruction. Over the next week, Malene and Sarah worked together to connect the pieces. Karen Brooks was a nurse who had lost her house after Derek forged her signature on a second mortgage. She had a 3-year-old son named Tyler who had never met his father. Amanda Foster was a schoolteacher whose credit had been destroyed so thoroughly she could not rent an apartment for 3 years. Her daughter was 5, and like the others, had never received a single dollar in child support. 4 women, 4 children, 4 shattered lives, and all of them traced back to Derek Langford. This is not just fraud, Linda Harrison said, when Malene brought her the evidence. This is a serial predator operating across state lines. This is federal territory. Can we use this in the custody case? If these women will testify in person, yes. Their testimony establishes a pattern of behavior that no judge can ignore. But getting them to New York, coordinating their schedules, preparing their cases, it will take time. And money we do not have. Malene thought for a moment. What about the press? Linda looked up sharply. That is risky. If you go public before the legal case is solid, Derek's lawyers will spin it as harassment. They will use it against you in court. But if we wait, Malene said, Derek keeps custody of Lucas every other weekend. He has unsupervised access to my son. She thought about the way Derek had smiled in that courtroom, the triumph in his eyes, the cruelty hidden just beneath the surface. I cannot live with that, she said. Linda studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I know a journalist, she said. Margaret Cole at the local news. She has covered financial abuse cases before, helped bring down a Ponzi scheme targeting elderly widows last year. If anyone can tell this story the right way, it is her. That evening, Malene met Margaret Cole at a coffee shop in Midtown. Margaret was in her 50s, with sharp features, steel gray hair cut short for practicality, and eyes that had seen too much wrongdoing to be shocked by anything. She wore a simple navy blazer and carried a worn leather bag stuffed with notebooks and recording equipment. Let me be clear from the start, Margaret said, stirring her black coffee without looking up. This story is compelling. 4 women, same man, same pattern, spanning 8 years. That is the kind of thing that gets attention. She finally met Malene's eyes. But I need verified documents. I need on-camera interviews. I need everything triple-sourced and bulletproof. And you need to understand that once this goes live, your life will never be the same. Derek's lawyers will come after you. His supporters will harass you. You will become a public figure, whether you want to or not. Malene thought about Lucas, about the bruise she had noticed on his arm after the last visit with Derek, about the way her son had cried for hours after being returned, as if he sensed something wrong. I understand, she said. Good. Margaret pulled out a notepad. Then let us get started. Over the next 2 weeks, the story came together. Sarah Mitchell flew in from Ohio, sitting for a 2-hour interview about her experience with Derek. Her testimony was devastating, calm, detailed, and absolutely believable. Karen Brooks sent video testimony from Chicago, her voice shaking with rage and grief as she described losing her home. Amanda Foster provided documents showing Derek's signature on forged loan applications, proof that he had done this before. The evidence was overwhelming. The pattern was undeniable. The story was scheduled to air on a Friday evening, prime time for maximum impact. Elias Whitmore reached out the day before. I heard about the interview, he texted. Are you sure about this? Malene had been avoiding his messages for weeks, uncomfortable with the closeness that seemed to be developing between them. But something about his question, the genuine concern behind it, made her pause. I have to be, she typed back. It is the only way to protect Lucas. The response came quickly. Let me know if you need anything. Connections, resources, anything at all. I want to help. She almost declined, as she always did, but then she thought about what Linda had said, about money, about resources, about the uphill battle she was facing against a man with endless funds and no conscience. Actually, she typed, can you help me get the evidence to more outlets? The more places this story runs, the harder it will be for Derek to suppress it. Consider it done, Elias replied. For the first time in weeks, Malene allowed herself to feel something like hope. The story was ready. The evidence was bulletproof. Derek's crimes were about to be exposed to the whole world. Tomorrow, everything would change. She went to bed that night feeling lighter than she had in months. Lucas slept peacefully in his crib. The apartment was quiet. The nightmare was almost over. Then she woke at 3 in the morning to a sound she could not identify. A creak, a scrape, something wrong. She sat up in bed, her heart suddenly pounding. The front door to her apartment was open, just slightly, just a few inches. But she had locked it. She was certain she had locked it. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, her hands shaking. The apartment was trashed. Her laptop was gone. Her backup hard drive was gone. The documents she had printed out, carefully organized in folders on her kitchen table, were scattered across the floor like confetti. And there, on the counter where her phone had been charging, was a note. Simple, handwritten, terrifying. Drop the story or lose the baby. Malene stood frozen in her ransacked apartment, the threatening note trembling in her hands. 3 words kept running through her mind, over and over, like a prayer that had lost its meaning. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. The evidence she had spent weeks gathering, the documents that proved Derek's pattern of abuse, the testimony from 4 women willing to speak out, all of it was gone. She called Margaret Cole with shaking fingers. Someone broke in, she said, her voice barely recognizable. Everything is gone. My laptop, my drives, the printed documents, everything. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Without the original documents, I cannot run the story. It becomes allegations without proof. Derek's lawyers would tear us apart. Please, Malene begged. The women can still testify. We can rebuild the files. We can get copies. Even if we could, Margaret said gently. That takes time. Weeks, maybe months. time you do not have with the next custody hearing approaching. Malene felt her knees buckle. She slid down against the wall, clutching the phone to her ear. "I am so sorry," Margaret continued. "I want to help. I truly do. But I cannot run a story I cannot verify. It would destroy my credibility and make things worse for you." The line went dead. Malene sat on the floor of her destroyed apartment, surrounded by scattered papers and broken glass, and felt the last of her hope drain away. Lucas started crying in the next room. She forced herself to stand, forced herself to walk to his crib, forced herself to pick him up and rock him gently, even though her own tears were falling faster than she could wipe them away. "It is okay," she whispered against his soft hair. "Mommy is here. Mommy will figure this out." But she did not know how. The next morning, she filed a police report about the break-in. The officer who took her statement was sympathetic, but not optimistic. "No signs of forced entry," he said, studying the front door. "Either someone had a key, or you forgot to lock up." "I did not forget," Malene said firmly. "I always lock the door. Always." The officer nodded, making a note. "And you believe your ex-boyfriend is responsible?" "I know he is." "Unfortunately, ma'am," the officer said, closing his notebook. "Knowing and proving are two different things. Without security footage or witnesses, there is not much we can do." Malene watched him leave, feeling more alone than ever. That afternoon, Richard Blake filed an emergency motion. "Your Honor," Blake said at the hastily scheduled hearing, "my client has become aware of Miss Rhodes's attempts to fabricate evidence and coordinate a media attack against him. This pattern of harassment demonstrates precisely the kind of instability we warned the court about." Judge Patterson studied the motion with a frown. "Miss Rhodes, how do you respond?" Malene stood on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. "Someone broke into my apartment," she said. "They stole evidence and left a note threatening my child. I believe Derek was responsible." Blake let out a theatrical sigh. "Your Honor, this is paranoid delusion. My client was at a dinner party with 6 witnesses the night of this alleged break-in. Miss Rhodes is clearly experiencing a mental health crisis." "I am not lying," Malene said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "Derek is dangerous. He has done this to 4 other women. 4 anonymous women who refuse to appear in this courtroom," Blake countered smoothly. "Convenient accusers who only exist in internet forums." Judge Patterson held up a hand. "Miss Rhodes, do you have any evidence to support these claims?" Malene felt her throat tighten. The truth was simple and devastating. "Not anymore," she said. "They took everything." The judge shook his head slowly, something that might have been pity crossing his features. "Without evidence, I cannot consider unsupported allegations. Based on the pattern of behavior that I have observed, including today's accusations without proof, I am modifying the custody arrangement." "No," Malene whispered. "Mr. Langford will now have unsupervised visitation every other weekend, effective immediately." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Your Honor, please," she begged. "He is not safe. My son is not safe with him." "My decision is final," the judge said firmly. "I suggest you use the time before the next hearing to address your mental health concerns." Court is adjourned. The gavel fell like a death sentence. Derek caught her eye as he walked out of the courtroom. This time, he did not even try to hide his smile. The first unsupervised weekend arrived faster than Malene could prepare for. She spent Friday morning double-checking everything. Extra diapers, extra formula, Lucas's favorite stuffed bear. Written instructions for his feeding schedule, his nap times, his bedtime routine. None of it would matter. She knew Derek would not follow any of it, but she wrote it anyway because doing something felt better than doing nothing. Derek pulled up to her apartment building at 3 in the afternoon, Victoria Chase in the passenger seat. He was smiling. "Ready for some daddy time," he said, reaching for Lucas. Malene held her son tight, memorizing the weight of him in her arms, the curve of his cheek, the way his tiny fingers wrapped around hers. "If anything happens to him," she said quietly, "I will find you." Derek's smile flickered. "Relax, Maddie. I am his father." He took Lucas from her arms and walked away without looking back. Malene stood at the window and watched until the car disappeared around the corner. Then she sank to the floor and sobbed. The weekend stretched into an eternity of silence. Malene called Derek every 3 hours. He never answered. She texted asking for photos, for updates, for any proof that Lucas was okay. Nothing. By Saturday night, she was pacing her apartment like a caged animal, jumping at every sound, imagining every possible disaster. What if he was not feeding Lucas properly? What if he was leaving him with strangers? What if he was hurting him just to hurt her? She called the police. But they told her there was nothing they could do. Derek had legal custody. Unless she had evidence of actual abuse, their hands were tied. Evidence. Everything always came back to evidence she did not have. On Sunday evening, Derek finally returned. Malene rushed outside, her heart pounding, reaching for Lucas the moment the car door opened. He looked okay. He was dressed in the same clothes she had packed. He was not crying, but something was wrong. She saw it immediately when she lifted his shirt to check his diaper. A bruise on his left arm, small but distinct, the shape of fingerprints. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice sharp with fear. Derek shrugged, already turning back toward the car. "He fell. He is 4 months old," Malene said. "He cannot walk. He cannot climb. How could he fall and bruise his arm?" "Kid's bruise," Derek said over his shoulder. "You are being dramatic." As usual. He drove away before she could respond. Malene took Lucas inside and photographed the bruise from every angle. Then she called the police again. Officer Nancy Coleman from Child Protective Services arrived the next morning. She was a heavy-set woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened carefully as Malene explained everything: the abandonment, the financial abuse, the threats, the break-in, the bruise. "This is concerning," Nancy said when Malene finished, "but I have to warn you. When CPS opens an investigation, both parents are examined. If Mr. Langford makes counterclaims, he will say I did it," Malene finished. "He will say, I hurt my own baby to frame him. It happens more than you would think," Nancy said quietly. "I did not hurt my son," Malene said fiercely. "I would never hurt him. I would die before I let anyone hurt him." "I believe you," Nancy said, "but beliefs are not evidence. We will need to document everything carefully." The investigation opened that afternoon. By evening, Derek's lawyer had filed a motion claiming Malene was the abuser. By midnight, Malene received notification that Derek was seeking to have her parental rights terminated entirely. She sat alone in her dark apartment, Lucas finally asleep after hours of fussing, and stared at the wall. She had hit bottom. No, she had gone through the bottom and was still falling. She thought about giving up, not hurting herself, not ending things, but just stopping fighting, stopping struggling, accepting that Derek had won and there was nothing she could do about it. Then she looked at Lucas, sleeping peacefully in his crib, and the thought evaporated. She could not give up. She would not give up, not for herself. For him. She picked up her phone and dialed the crisis hotline. Not because she was in crisis, exactly, but because she needed someone to talk to. Someone who would listen without judging. Someone who might help her find a way forward when every path seemed blocked. A calm voice answered on the second ring. Crisis line. How can I help you tonight? Malene exhaled slowly. I do not know what to do anymore, she said. I have lost everything. My evidence, my case, my ability to protect my son. I feel like I am drowning and nobody can see me. Tell me what is happening, the counselor said gently. So Malene did, all of it. From the hospital to the snow, from the shelter to the courtroom, from the break-in to the bruise on her baby's arm. When she finished, the counselor was quiet for a long moment. You have been through more than most people could survive, the counselor finally said, and you are still here, still fighting, still protecting your son. That is not nothing. That is everything. But I do not know how to win, Malene whispered. Then let us think about what you still have, the counselor said, not what you have lost. What do you have right now, tonight, that nobody can take away? Malene thought about it, really thought. I have my memory, she said slowly. I remember everything Derek did, every date, every detail, every lie. What else? I have witnesses, women who went through the same thing, women who know the truth. What else? I have the truth itself. I know what really happened. I know who Derek really is. Then use it, the counselor said. Find another way to tell your story. The first door closed. Find another door. Malene hung up the phone and sat in the darkness for a long time. Another door. There had to be another door. And somewhere in the back of her mind, an idea began to form. Rosa Delgado's phone call came at 7 in the morning. Malene had barely slept. She was running on coffee and desperation, her mind still churning through possibilities, when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar local number. Malene, it is Rosa. From the hospital, I have something you need to see. Rosa had kept copies. When Malene arrived at Rosa's small apartment in the Bronx, an hour later, the nurse was waiting with a thick folder of documents. The intake photos from the night you arrived, Rosa explained, spreading papers across her kitchen table, time-stamped, showing your condition when you came in, showing that you were the victim, not the abuser. Malene stared at the photographs, pictures of herself, pale and exhausted, clutching Lucas in a thin hospital gown, pictures of the bruises on her arms from where she had fallen in the snow, pictures of the discharge paperwork with the insurance cancellation clearly documented. Why did you keep these? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Because I knew something was wrong that night, Rosa said. I have worked in hospitals for 23 years. I have seen a lot of terrible things. Abuse, abandonment, women thrown away by men who promised to love them. I have learned to recognize the signs. She placed a hand over Malene's, and I have learned that the system often fails women like you. So, I keep copies, just in case someone needs them later. Malene felt tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do not thank me yet, Rosa said. This is just the beginning. You need more than hospital photos to win this fight. She was right. But Rosa's documents gave Malene something she had lost. Hope. Evidence that the truth still existed, even if Derek thought he had destroyed it. Over the next few days, Malene reached out to everyone who might help. Sarah Mitchell still had her original documents, backed up on a cloud server Derek did not know about. Karen Brooks had kept her forged mortgage paperwork, locked in a safe deposit box her ex-husband had never discovered. Amanda Foster had screenshots of text messages that proved Derek's pattern, saved on an old phone she had never gotten rid of. The evidence Derek thought he had destroyed had been scattered across 4 states, waiting to be reassembled. And then there was Denise Washington. Girl, Denise said when Malene explained the situation, what you need is not just evidence. What you need is an army. She pulled out her laptop and opened the Phoenix Moms Forum. You have been fighting alone for too long, Denise continued. It is time to let your sisters help you carry the weight. Within hours, the Phoenix moms had mobilized. Women across the country began sharing Maline's story. Not the sensationalized version, but the truth, the documented truth, with evidence and sources and court records. A GoFundMe campaign launched to cover legal expenses. Within 24 hours, it had raised $15,000 from over 300 donors. A petition demanding that the family court re-examine custody decisions involving accused abusers gathered 5,000 signatures in 2 days. Most importantly, a Phoenix Moms member named Tasha Williams, who worked as a paralegal at a major law firm, discovered something crucial about Victoria Chase. "Girl," Tasha wrote in a private message, "you need to see Victoria's Instagram account. She has been posting photos of your baby." Maline clicked the link and felt her blood boil. Victoria had created an entire series of posts featuring Lucas, calling herself his bonus mom, his real mother figure, using his image to promote products from mommy influencers. There were affiliate links, sponsorship deals, brand partnerships. Victoria Chase was making money off Maline's stolen son. "This is illegal," Linda Harrison said when Maline showed her the screenshots. "Commercial exploitation of a minor without parental consent. Unauthorized use of a child's image for profit. Victoria could face serious legal consequences. Can we use this against Derek?" "Better than that." Linda's eyes gleamed with the first real hope Maline had seen in weeks. This proves that Derek was not just neglecting Lucas during visits. He was actively allowing his girlfriend to exploit him. No judge can ignore this. The case against Derek was rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. And then came the biggest breakthrough of all. Elias Whitmore called on a Thursday evening. "I have news," he said. "My legal team has been doing some digging into Derek's background. He has been hiding something significant." "What did you find?" "There is a criminal record," Elias said, "sealed juvenile file, from when he was 17, normally untouchable, but one of my investigators found a police report from the same period that mentions his name." Maline's heart was pounding. "What did he do?" "Assault," Elias said quietly. "He attacked a girlfriend in high school, beat her badly enough to hospitalize her." The charges were dropped because his family paid off the victim's parents, and the record was sealed as part of a deal. Maline felt sick. Derek had done this before. He had always done this. The charming facade, the financial manipulation, the abandonment. It was all part of a pattern that stretched back decades. "Can we use this in court?" "Not the sealed record directly," Elias said, "but the police report is technically public, and if we can find the victim, she could choose to speak voluntarily." It took 3 days to track her down. Her name was Jennifer Walsh. She was 37 now, married with 2 kids, living in a suburb of Boston. She had spent 20 years trying to forget Derek Langford ever existed. But when Maline called her, Jennifer did not hesitate. "I always knew he would do this to someone else," Jennifer said, her voice heavy with old trauma. "I always knew, and I felt guilty for not warning anyone. I was just so scared, so ashamed." "You do not have to testify," Maline said gently. "I just wanted you to know that you are not alone." "No," Jennifer said firmly. "I want to testify. I want to finally tell the truth about what he did to me. I have been carrying this for 20 years. It is time to let it go. 5 women, 5 testimonies, 20 years of evidence, and a new trial date, approved by Judge Helen Crawford, who had a reputation for seeing through manipulative men and protecting vulnerable children. The tide was turning, and Derek Langford had no idea what was coming. The courtroom of Judge Helen Crawford felt different from the beginning. The same wood-paneled walls, the same fluorescent lights, the same American flag drooping in the corner. But the atmosphere was charged with something new: anticipation, consequence, the weight of truth finally ready to be spoken. Judge Crawford sat at the bench, her silver hair pulled back severely, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the crowded courtroom. She was in her late 50s, with a reputation that preceded her through every family court in the state. Fair but fierce, patient but perceptive, absolutely intolerant of manipulation. Derek Langford sat at his table in another expensive suit, but something had changed. The confident smile was gone. The relaxed posture had stiffened. He kept glancing toward the gallery, where row after row of women sat watching him. Phoenix Moms members who had traveled from across the country. Sarah Mitchell from Ohio, Karen Brooks from Chicago, Amanda Foster from Philadelphia, Jennifer Walsh from Boston, and in the front row, Denise Washington wearing her best church dress and an expression that could have cut glass. "Your Honor," Linda Harrison began, rising from Maline's side. "Over the past 8 years, Derek Langford has systematically targeted at least 5 women with an identical pattern of financial abuse, identity theft, and child abandonment. Today, you will hear from those women directly." Richard Blake jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial. These witnesses are prejudicial and irrelevant." Judge Crawford's gaze was ice. "Counselor, I will determine what is relevant in my courtroom. Sit down." Blake sat. One by one, the witnesses took the stand. Sarah Mitchell went first. She spoke calmly and clearly about meeting Derek, falling for his charm, watching her savings disappear, about giving birth alone, about raising Emma for 6 years without a word from the man who fathered her. "He told me I was special," Sarah said. "He told me I was the only one who understood him. Then he took everything I had and vanished." Karen Brooks testified via video link, her face filling a large screen at the front of the courtroom. She described the forged mortgage documents, the foreclosure, the years of rebuilding her credit. "I lost my home because of him," Karen said. "The home my mother left me when she died. He stole my inheritance and my security." Amanda Foster spoke softly but steadily about the credit cards opened in her name, the collection agencies, the landlords who refused to rent to her. "I was a teacher," Amanda said. "I had dedicated my life to children, and Derek destroyed my ability to support my own child because he wanted designer clothes and gambling money." Then came Jennifer Walsh. The courtroom went completely silent as she took the stand. She was visibly nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she raised them to take the oath. But her voice was strong. "I was 17 years old when I dated Derek Langford," Jennifer said. "I thought I was in love. I thought he was wonderful." She paused, gathering herself. "One night, we got into an argument. I do not even remember what it was about. Something small. But Derek snapped. He hit me. Then he kept hitting me. He broke my jaw and 3 of my ribs." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "His family paid my parents to drop the charges," Jennifer continued. "They sealed the records, and I spent the next 20 years trying to forget it ever happened." She looked directly at Derek for the first time. "But I never forgot," she said. "And when I heard there were other women he was still hurting, I knew I had to speak." Richard Blake tried to object. He tried to discredit the witnesses. He tried every legal maneuver his expensive education had taught him. But Judge Crawford was unmoved. 4 separate women from 3 different states, she said during a brief recess, all telling identical stories spanning nearly a decade. "This is not bitterness. This is not conspiracy. This is a documented pattern of predatory behavior." When it was Derek's turn on the stand, his carefully constructed facade had begun to crack. Richard Blake guided him through a rehearsed narrative. Devoted father, misunderstood man, victim of vindictive women. But then Linda Harrison stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Langford," she said calmly, "you claim to be a devoted father. Can you name your son's pediatrician?" Derek blinked. "I do not recall the name off the top of my head. His birthday?" Derek hesitated. "It is in the fall, September, I think, or October. It is November 15th, Linda said flatly. "Today is November 15th. Your son's birthday was 4 months ago." Derek's face went red. "I have been under a lot of stress." "The brand of formula Lucas needs because of his digestive issues?" Silence. "The name of his favorite toy?" More silence. "Have you ever changed his diaper, Mr. Langford? Have you ever fed him in the middle of the night? Have you ever stayed up with him when he was sick?" "I have been fighting for access," Derek said through gritted teeth. "I have not had the chance to bond with him properly." "You had him alone for 3 weekends," Linda said. "Unsupervised. What did you do during those visits?" Derek opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "We spent quality time together," he finally said. "Father-son time." "Where did you take him?" "Various places." "Can you name one?" The silence stretched until it became its own answer. "No further questions," Linda said. Judge Crawford made a note. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes told a different story. She had seen through him. The closing arguments were almost anticlimactic. Blake spoke of constitutional rights and parental bonds and the danger of believing unverified accusations. His words were technically competent, but emotionally hollow. Linda spoke of patterns, of evidence, of 5 women whose lives had been destroyed by the same man. Millionaire Rhodes is simply the first to fight back, Linda concluded, the first to find her voice, the first to refuse to be silent. Your Honor, I urge you to protect her child from a man who has demonstrated over and over that he is incapable of protecting anyone but himself. Judge Crawford nodded once. "I will render my decision tomorrow morning," she said. "Court is adjourned." That night, Millionaire could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every word that had been spoken in the courtroom. Every gesture, every expression on Judge Crawford's face. Had it been enough? Had the truth finally been enough? Denise called at midnight. "Girl, you need to sleep," Denise said firmly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you did everything you could. You fought harder than anyone I have ever seen. What if it is not enough? Then you fight again," Denise said simply, and again, until you win or until you cannot fight anymore. That is what warriors do. Millionaire smiled despite her fear. "When did you become so wise? Honey, I was born wise. The world just took a while to catch up." At 9 the next morning, Millionaire sat in the courtroom with Lucas in her arms for the first time since the trial began. Judge Crawford had allowed it. The courtroom was packed. Phoenix moms filled the gallery. Sarah, Karen, Amanda, and Jennifer sat together in the front row. Denise was beside them, her hand pressed over her heart. Even Elias was there, sitting quietly in the back, his presence a steady comfort she had not known she needed. Judge Crawford reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke. "In the matter of Rhodes versus Langford, I find the following." Millionaire held her breath. 1. Derek Langford has demonstrated a clear and documented pattern of financial abuse, identity theft, and child abandonment spanning at least 8 years and 5 verified victims. Derek lurched forward in his seat. His lawyer grabbed his arm. 2. The testimony presented by the respondent and her witnesses is credible, corroborated, and consistent. Judge Crawford looked directly at Derek. 3. Derek Langford's parental rights regarding the minor child Lucas Rhodes are hereby terminated, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted. Cheers from the gallery. Sobs of relief. Denise shouting something that sounded like, "Hallelujah." Derek was on his feet, his face twisted with rage. "You cannot do this. I have rights. I am his father." "You forfeited those rights," Judge Crawford said coldly, "when you abandoned your child and his mother outside a hospital in a snowstorm, when you stole her identity and destroyed her finances, when you allowed your girlfriend to exploit your son for commercial gain." She banged her gavel sharply. "Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Mr. Langford, I strongly suggest you retain criminal defense counsel." Derek's face went white. "Full custody of Lucas Rhodes is awarded to his mother, Malene Rhodes. No visitation for the respondent. A protective order is issued, effective immediately, prohibiting Mr. Langford from contacting Miss Rhodes or her son." Another bang of the gavel. "This court is adjourned." Malene burst into tears. It was over. After everything she had been through, after every moment of despair and fear and hopelessness, it was finally over. Sarah Mitchell reached her first, pulling her into a tight hug. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Malene corrected, her voice breaking. "All of us together." The Phoenix moms surrounded her, women she had never met in person, women who had believed in her when no one else did, women who had fought beside her every step of the way. And somewhere in the chaos, she caught Elias's eye across the courtroom. He was smiling, not the smile of a rescuer, not the smile of a man who thought he had saved her, the smile of someone who had watched her save herself and was proud of what he had witnessed. Outside the courthouse, Derek was being led away in handcuffs. His designer suit was wrinkled. His perfect hair was disheveled. His charming smile had finally, completely shattered. He turned and looked back at Malene one last time. She met his gaze steadily. Then she turned and walked away, her son in her arms, her head held high. She did not look back. 6 months later. The apartment in Queens had been transformed. What was once a sparse refuge, furnished with second-hand furniture and desperate hope, had become a home. Real curtains in the windows, a soft rug on the living room floor, photos on the walls, most of them featuring Lucas at various stages of his first year of life. Malene stood at the kitchen counter, making coffee, watching the morning light stream through the window. Lucas was in his high chair, messily attempting to eat Cheerios, more of them ending up on the floor than in his mouth. Her phone buzzed with a text from Denise. "Girl, you better be getting ready. The ceremony starts in 3 hours, and I know how long it takes you to do your hair." Malene smiled and typed back, "My hair looks fine. It is my nerves that need work." Today was the Phoenix Moms annual celebration, and Malene was the keynote speaker. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Derek Langford was serving 8 to 15 years in federal prison. The charges had multiplied once investigators started digging wire fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, assault charges from Jennifer Walsh that had been reopened when she finally felt safe enough to pursue them. Victoria Chase had fled to Florida after her Instagram account was permanently suspended and her brand partnerships evaporated. Last anyone heard, she was working at a boutique hotel, her influencer, dreams in ruins. The Phoenix Moms had grown from a scattered online community into a national organization. Legal aid partnerships, emergency housing networks, a crisis hotline staffed by survivors who understood, a political action committee pushing for stronger protections for victims of financial abuse. And Malene had found her calling. She worked as a patient advocate at Mercy General Hospital now, helping women navigate medical crises when they felt lost and alone, the same way Rosa Delgado had helped her on the worst night of her life. Every day she met women in hospital hallways who reminded her of herself, scared, overwhelmed, convinced they had nowhere to turn and every day she proved them wrong. The job did not pay much, but it filled something in her soul that money could never touch. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Elias. "Good luck today. I know you will be amazing." Helene hesitated, then typed back, "Thank you, and thank you for being there, through all of it." His response came quickly. "I told you once, I am here if you need a friend. That has not changed. A friend." It had stayed that way for the first 4 months after the trial. She needed time to heal, to find herself again, to make sure she was not just jumping from one man to another. Elias had understood. He had been patient, he had been present without being pushy, and somewhere along the way, friendship had shifted into something more. Their first real date had been 3 weeks ago, a quiet dinner at a restaurant that was neither too fancy nor too casual. Conversation that flowed easily, laughter that felt natural. At the end of the night, he had walked her to her door and not tried to kiss her. "I want to do this right," he had said. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I want it to be on your terms." She had kissed him then, just briefly, just enough to let him know that she wanted to find out what this could be. Tonight, after the ceremony, they had plans for their fourth date. She was looking forward to it. The Phoenix Moms annual celebration was held in a hotel ballroom in Midtown Manhattan. 300 women filled the space, wearing purple and gold, the organization's colors. Banners lined the walls with the Phoenix Moms logo, a bird rising from flames, wings spread wide. Malene stood backstage, her palms sweating, reviewing her notes for the 100th time. Denise appeared beside her, resplendent in a gold dress that caught the light. "You ready?" Malene shook her head. "No." "Good," Denise said with a grin. "If you were not nervous, I would be worried about you. What if I forget what to say? Then you speak from the heart. That is where the best words come from anyway." The MC was introducing her now. She could hear the words through the thin curtain, separating her from the stage. A woman who turned her darkest moment into a movement. A mother who fought back when everyone told her to give up. "Please welcome Malene Rhodes." Applause thundered through the ballroom. Denise squeezed her hand one last time. "Go show them who you are." Malene stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first. 300 faces looked up at her, some tear-streaked, some hopeful, all hungry for something real, something true. She took a breath, and she began. "1 year ago," she said, her voice steady. "Despite the pounding of her heart, I stood outside a hospital in the snow with a newborn in my arms. No money, no home, no hope. The man who was supposed to love me had abandoned us. The system that was supposed to protect us had failed. I had nothing." She paused, letting the words settle. "And yes, a man showed up that night, a billionaire in a limousine, and I know what you are thinking. That is where the story turns into a fairy tale. That is where she gets rescued, and everything becomes perfect." She shook her head. "That is not what happened." The room was absolutely silent. "He offered me help, and I said no. I told him to take me to a women's shelter instead, because even at my lowest moment, I knew something that took me years to learn. I did not need someone to save me. I needed to save myself." She saw women nodding, women wiping their eyes, women who understood exactly what she meant. "Over the next year, I built my case with help from women like you. Nurses who broke rules to protect me, lawyers who worked for free, strangers on the internet who donated $5 because they believed in my fight, women who had survived the same nightmare and refused to let me face it alone." She looked out at the crowd, at Sarah and Karen and Amanda and Jennifer, sitting together in the front row. "The man from the limousine," she continued. "He is here tonight. His name is Elias. And yes, we are together now." A ripple of murmurs through the crowd. But I did not fall in love with him because he rescued me. I fell in love with him because he watched me rescue myself. He stood beside me without trying to stand in front of me. He believed in my strength even when I did not believe in it myself. She smiled softly. That is what real partnership looks like. Not being saved, being seen. In the back of the room, Elias sat quietly, his eyes bright with emotion. If you are watching this, Malene continued, if you are in the middle of your own storm, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are not your worst moment. Her voice grew stronger. When I was at my lowest, someone asked me what I still had. Not what I had lost. What I still had. And I realized that even when they take everything, they cannot take what you know. They cannot take your truth. They cannot take your voice. She gripped the podium. We are the Phoenix Moms. We burn down and we rise up. And so will you. The room erupted in applause. Standing ovation. 300 women on their feet. Cheering, crying, believing. Malene stood at the microphone, tears streaming down her face, and felt something she had not felt since before Derek Langford walked into her life. Whole. After the speech, women lined up to shake Malene's hand. They came with their own stories, their own scars, their own small victories and ongoing battles. A woman from Texas, whose husband had drained her 401k. A woman from Oregon who was in the middle of a custody fight. A teenager who had come with her mother and wanted to know how to help. Malene listened to each one, held their hands, told them the truth she had learned. You are stronger than you think. Find your tribe. Document everything. Never give up. Denise stood nearby, directing traffic, making sure no one monopolized too much time. All right, ladies, Denise announced after an hour. Our girl needs to eat and breathe. She will be back for photos later. As the crowd dispersed, Malene noticed a young woman hanging back near the exit. She was maybe 22, with tired eyes and a rounded belly that suggested she was several months pregnant. She stood alone, watching the celebration with an expression that was equal parts hope and fear. Malene walked over. I am Malene, she said gently. What is your name? The young woman startled slightly. Emily. Emily Walker. Are you okay, Emily? Emily's eyes filled with tears. I do not know. I thought I was. I thought he loved me, but then I saw your speech, and I realized. She could not finish the sentence. You realized what? Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That I have been making excuses for him, the same way you made excuses, the same way all those women made excuses. And I do not know what to do. Malene took her hand. The first step is knowing, she said. The second step is deciding you deserve better. Everything after that, we figure out together. Together? Malene nodded. You found the Phoenix Moms. That means you are not alone anymore. That means you have 300 women who will believe you, support you, and fight beside you. She squeezed Emily's hand. I was you a year ago, scared, pregnant, convinced I had no options, but I was wrong. And so are you. Emily let out a shaky breath. I do not even know where to start. Start by telling me your story, Malene said. Right now. Right here. I have got time. They found a quiet corner of the hotel lobby and talked for over an hour. Emily's story was heartbreakingly familiar. The charming boyfriend, the quick progression, the borrowed money, the isolation from friends and family, the pregnancy that was supposed to fix everything but only made things worse. By the time Emily finished talking, she was crying openly, but something had shifted in her eyes. I thought I was crazy, Emily said. I thought I was the problem. He made me believe that. Malene handed her a tissue. That is what they do. They make us believe the problem is us, so we never look at them. What do I do now? First, you get somewhere safe. Do you have family? Friends you can stay with? Emily nodded hesitantly. My sister. We have not talked in months. He did not like her. Call her, Malene said firmly. Tonight. Tell her what is happening. Let her help you. What if she does not believe me? Then you come back to us, Malene said. The Phoenix Moms will help you find housing, legal aid, everything you need. But I think your sister will believe you. I think she has been waiting for you to reach out. Emily looked down at her phone, then back up at Malene. Thank you, she whispered. Malene smiled. Thank me by getting out, by building a life for yourself and your baby, by becoming another woman who survived. I will, Emily said. I promise. She walked away, already dialing her sister's number. Malene watched her go, feeling something warm bloom in her chest. One more woman who would not have to hit rock bottom the way she had. One more child who would grow up safe. That was enough for today. That was more than enough. Denise appeared beside her. You know, girl, you cannot save everyone. I know, Malene said, but I can save this one, and that one, and the next one at a time, until there are none left who need saving. Denise shook her head with a smile. When did you become such a warrior? I always was, Malene said. I just did not know it yet. The after-party was winding down when Elias found her. She was standing on the hotel terrace, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, the same skyline that had seemed so cold and indifferent on the night she stood outside the hospital with nowhere to go. It looked different now, not warmer exactly. New York was never warm, but full of possibility, full of stories like hers, women fighting their way through darkness toward light. You were incredible today, Elias said, coming to stand beside her. I was terrified, she admitted. He smiled. That is what makes it incredible. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the lights. Can I ask you something? Malene finally said. Anything. Why did you wait for me? All those months when I kept pushing you away, when I kept saying I needed to do things myself, why did you stay? Elias was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Because I recognized something in you, he said. The same thing my wife Caroline had. Strength that did not need to be loud to be real. Courage that showed up in small moments, not grand gestures. He turned to look at her, and because I knew that if I pushed, I would lose you. You needed to find your own feet first. You needed to know that you could stand alone before you could choose to stand with someone else. Malene felt tears prick her eyes. How did you know that? Because I needed the same thing after Caroline died, Elias said quietly. Someone who would wait while I figured out who I was without her. Someone who would be there when I was ready, not when they thought I should be. Did you find that person? He smiled softly. I found you. Malene reached out and took his hand. They stood there for a long moment, looking out at the city that had tried to break her and failed. I am ready now, Malene said finally, to see where this goes, to build something real. Elias squeezed her hand. So am I. Inside the ballroom, someone had started playing music. Malene could hear laughter, conversation, the sound of women celebrating their survival, her tribe, her family, her proof that kindness was never weakness. 2 hours later, Malene sat on the floor of her Queens apartment, Lucas asleep in his crib, the apartment quiet around her. The evening had been perfect. Dinner with Elias at a restaurant that was becoming their favorite. A walk through Central Park despite the cold. A kiss goodnight that was longer than the previous ones. She was happy. Actually, genuinely, deeply happy. It was such a strange feeling after everything she had been through. Part of her kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop, for the happiness to be snatched away like everything else good in her life had been snatched away. But another part of her, a growing part, was beginning to believe that maybe this was real. Maybe she had earned this. Maybe the universe or fate or whatever forces governed human lives had finally decided she had suffered enough. Her phone buzzed with a text from Denise. Best speech I have ever heard, and I have heard a lot of speeches. Malene smiled and typed back. Could not have done it without you. Denise's response was immediate. Girl, you could have done anything. I just made sure you looked good while doing it. She set down the phone and walked to Lucas's crib. He was sleeping peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling, his face relaxed in complete trust. He had no idea what his mother had been through to keep him safe. He had no idea about the courtrooms and the evidence and the women who had rallied around them. All he knew was that she was there. Every morning when he woke up, every night when he fell asleep, every moment in between. That was enough. That was everything. I promised you, she whispered, brushing her fingers gently across his cheek. I promised I would never let anyone treat you the way your father treated me. She smiled through fresh tears. And I kept that promise. Outside the window, Manhattan glittered against the dark sky. The same city that had once seemed so cold and unforgiving now felt like home. Malene turned off the lamp and climbed into bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. But before she fell asleep, she allowed herself one final thought. She had been left outside a hospital in the snow with nothing but a newborn and a broken heart, and she had turned that nothing into everything. A home, a career, a community, a love that saw her as she truly was. She had risen from the ashes of her own destruction and built something beautiful. She was a phoenix, and she would never stop rising. Now, if stories like this matter to you, if you believe women deserve to hear messages of strength and survival, I have a small favor to ask. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Your words help this story reach women who need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a story that could change someone's life. And if you know someone going through a hard time, share this video with them. Sometimes a story is the lifeline someone needs to realize they are not alone. Your support keeps this channel alive. And together, we are building a community of survivors, fighters, and believers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Now, let us begin. Closing statement, thank you for staying with me until the very end. Your time means everything. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Every interaction helps this message reach women who need to hear it most. Subscribe to this channel and join our family of survivors. Together, we are stronger than any storm. And remember, no matter what you are facing right now, you have the power to rise. You have the strength to fight. You have a tribe waiting to support you. We are the Phoenix Moms. We burn down and we rise up, and so will you. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience. Every word was chosen with purpose. Every scene was crafted with care. Our goal is not just to entertain, but to inspire, educate, and empower. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.